So it's interesting that I get to be the last talk here. I'm certainly not the most successful of the people who are speaking at this conference. I haven't sold a bunch of businesses. I haven't invested in any companies. I think that I'm probably in a similar spot to most of you, which is why I'm really excited to be closing this presentation, because I want to talk about, how we're kind of in the same boat and how we can maybe guide that boat to a great place. So this is just a very silly picture of me. I'm human, like everybody here. I do stupid things. Sometimes I get through them. Sometimes I find some success. Sometimes I don't. But the reality is, I live in Silicon Valley. I live in San Francisco. I love it. It's a beautiful place. There's a lot of technology stuff going on. But much of what you're reading there isn't quite what it's like for most of us who are like me. And I want to talk about how I make the most of that experience, how I make the most of the experience when I'm traveling, and how maybe you can learn from some of my lessons learned. So I'm going to talk about some of those victories. A little bit of background on myself. I've done a few things. I started a company about 10, 11 years ago that was a productivity training business. Now it's at the very bottom there, SEC Consulting. Right now I run a business that's called Awayfind, which, as mentioned earlier, it helps people to get away from their email. We find you when there's a message that matters to you right now, so it's sort of, don't have to be interrupted all the time, but can instead focus on your work. I'm very passionate about that space, and as such, I also am on the board for the Information Overload Research Group, and I chair one of the biggest conferences in the email space called Inbox Love. The reason why I mention all this stuff to you is because this is sort of part of my strategy for getting the word out, for running my business, for doing things kind of inexpensively, but in a way that can make a lot of impact. So I'll talk about a lot of my sort of secrets there. I also am a mentor at 500 Startups, and we took investment from them, and a mentor at Founder Institute, which I understand you guys have just down the street. So I want to be here to help however I can. I'm sad that it's the last talk, but this is a little bit about me, and I'll share some of my stories. So to begin, I want to ask, if you all could raise your hand when I ask your category and just keep it up if it still applies to you. How many of you have been working on an idea for more than 3 months? Okay. More than 6 months? A year? 2 years? 3 years? 4 years? 5? Okay. 5 years? 6 years? How long have you been working on your idea, sir? 7 years. It takes a long time to do this stuff. It takes a real long time. I don't want to talk about failure because, we've had all these different opinions at this event about failure. The reality is you're continually failing, and it's just if you stay alive, there's a better chance that maybe something will come of that. So 5 years is at least how long you need to think about for how long things are going to take. I'm going to give you some examples. See that slide over there? What's the name of that company? Okay, put that out of your mind. It's just not even worth thinking about. Nobody starts a business and 11 months later sells it for $1 billion. It doesn't happen. You're more likely to win the lottery, okay? So forget about that, and instead we're going to talk about how long it really takes and what are some of the right reasons for building a business. It takes a long time. So some of the reality here. Does anybody know who this is? Anybody? Maybe the speaker area? What's that? It's not Sergey, and I won't, trust me, for many reasons. This guy's name is Leon Ho. Leon Ho is a Hong Kong entrepreneur. He has a company that's called Steply. He also runs a website that's called Stepcase Lifehack, or lifehack.org. He's been at this for over 6 years, okay? He has a product that does everything that Instagram did with millions of users. And he hasn't had a big exit. But I love Leon. He's a great guy. He's got his first baby coming in a few months, which is wonderful. He has a team of like 5 or 7 people that he's able to support, and they make money. They didn't succeed at raising a big venture round. They tried a few times. But the reality is, again, they make money. They have a great business. They have a very active product. It's particularly active in Asia. A lot of the photo sharing stuff came there first, and then we in the US sort of blew it up and unfortunately took advantage of it. But Leon's a great guy, and his story is more like my story, and it's probably going to be more like your story. And I don't say that in a bad way, because I think the journey is freaking awesome. So let's talk about this journey. Well, Don had this earlier, so he took this out of my presentation. He didn't see it first, but sure enough, they took an angel investment several years into their business, and their 52nd company, at 6 years into their business, was Angry Birds. And now we see somebody in a chicken suit or whatever at every conference in Europe. But it took them a little while to get there. What about OMG Pop, right? They were about to run out of money 1 month before they were going to run out of money. And then they came out with something called Draw Something, and Zynga acquired them for a lot of money, but it took them 6 years and over 35 games, 35, before they hit it big. Now, again, I'm not talking about failure. Forget about the failure. Maybe you learned from some of these things. What I'm talking about is time and patience. And I met those guys at parties before, and they were so passionate about what they were doing. They had such a fun culture there. It was just so much energy, and I knew that if they just stuck at it, they were going to succeed. They had an incredible culture. Unfortunately, Zynga didn't, and all of them are now gone. But they made their money, they made their great games, they had their success, and they capitalized on it. It took some time to stand it out, to stick it out. But they had their culture while they had it, and that was the whole point. That was the 7 years that got them to there. What about Pinterest? 2 years into being, it had 10,000 users. Now, I don't consider myself a big success, but 2 years into my being, we had more than 10,000 users. Come on. 48.7 million users now. The last time I did a similar presentation, this about a year ago, I think it was like 10 million. So dramatic increase over time. Now, we'd all love to see our curves go like that, and of course, when your application is more social, that's more possible. But the fact is, this stuff takes a long time, and they haven't had their big exit yet. Same thing, Tumblr, right? The writing was on the wall that they were running out of money, even though they had more than 12 million blogs 4 years into their being. Now, it took them some time. They got to 108 million, and of course, they sold to Yahoo for quite a bit of money. But again, 6 years. So you might not hit those amazing, he talked about, Bennett talked about KPIs, key performance indicators. Those numbers may not go up and to the right in the beginning. They might take a really long time. But if you really, really are passionate about your idea and are willing to keep looking at what's happening, you have a better chance of it pulling out. So this is back to me again. So I'm going to talk about my story, a little bit about where my KPIs were. So take a look at this. Is this a good graph? We have any investors in the room? Good graph? No. What about this one? Money. Also not good. Now, I started my business as a part-time thing in 2008 during my last business, during my last company. And then, I raised capital in the middle of 2210, and by the end of November, I thought, man, I'd have it big, it's like $15 a month by, I don't know, 1 million users or something, right? No, it doesn't quite work that way. It took a lot of work to get past November 11th, and it wasn't very fun at that exact moment, trust me. So I want to talk a little bit about accelerators. I'll come back to my own story. How many of you have been in an accelerator, out of curiosity? Okay. Anybody in like YC or 500 Startups or Techstars? They're not necessarily better, but they're the ones you guys have heard of in the US, right? They're actually, some of them are international as well. I'm proud to say that 500 Startups does more than half their investments outside of the US now, and Techstars now has their London location with Springboard. So those things are coming over here. A few years ago, someone did an analysis of the YC and Techstars classes. So some of the best accelerators before this thing was sort of the rage. And they looked at what happened to, say, their batches after a few years, after 3 to 4 years. So picture 100 bright lights, 100 opportunities, 100 startups. Of those, 25 of them just failed, right? 65 of them remained active after a few years, but only 29 of them actually had funding, right? So now 29 out of 100 of the best guys actually get some funding. So while I appreciate someone's point earlier today about how anybody can get funding if you have a great thing, the reality is it's really freaking hard to get funding. Even some of the best people don't get funding. Sure, they got $30,000 from their accelerator, but I assure you, it doesn't matter what country you live in, that will not get you very far. 10 of them were acquired for 10 million plus. Now, 10 million plus is not the kind of return that investors want, but it'll help those entrepreneurs to go out and run their next business. And one of them for over 100 million. And don't get me wrong, there's still the Dropboxes and some of the other big successes that are still out that are billion-dollar businesses. But that is the exception. I'm not trying to share this, though, to scare you. I'm trying to share this so you'll see just sort of what things really do look like, and they don't look like what we read on TechCrunch. Or the person who actually decided to stay here, Rob, and of course, they don't look like, maybe they are more accurate on the next web. So there's an 18% chance of success for first-time entrepreneurs. But that's all about sticking it out. 18% chance, that's the reality. It's okay if things don't work out the first time, but make that first time a long-lasting adventure. So what about me? Something went wrong, right, with my business. It was November of 2011. My numbers were not looking good, and I was still paying the same amount every month for my engineers, my 9 people on my team, right? So I want to double check something here. So why 18%? Anybody have any ideas for maybe why only 18% of them get there? Anybody? Quick guess? Team failure. Okay. Anybody else? Any others? 3 of the top 5 reasons. I'm going to read you them, okay? They got into the business for a reason other than what they ended up doing. In other words, they didn't end up going into what they thought it was going to turn into. So they weren't, they couldn't stay there long enough for it. That's the reason number 1. They got into the business for the wrong reason that entrepreneurs are saying. The third reason was understanding time. They didn't recognize just how much time commitment it was going to take. And the 5th of the 5 of the top reasons were family pressure on time and on money. I will say it's definitely easier to run a business like this when you're either independently wealthy, which I'm not, or don't have a family, which I don't, which is good at this exact moment, because if I had a wife, I probably would have been kicked out of my business a long time ago. But those are the things that actually happen, is we have to get behind something for a long time. So me, for example, there were 2 things that motivated me. I ran a consulting business and it was very successful. I got to spend lovely summers in Barcelona and it was wonderful, but I wasn't reaching enough people and I wanted to make an impact. That's why I got into building a product company. I wanted to reach millions of people. That's what motivates me. And then as I started to get into this company, I started to realize that I was working with some amazing people. So I'm going to talk about some of the little victories that have driven me, and then we're going to talk about what are the things that can drive you. So these are some of my team members. These are some more of my team members. These are people that I work with every day. My team has not changed since January of 2011. We've had the same 7 + 2, 7 full-time, 2 part-time people. They are wonderful people, and the reality is if I worked anywhere else, I wouldn't have people that I love showing up to work with every day. That's something that motivates me, and every single time we hit one of our product schedules and we release something that's amazing, or every time we get an email from our customers, that gets us excited. So even if we have to work late night sometimes, it's okay. And the reality is things actually did start to turn around with our customers. That's Gary Vaynerchuk over there signing my Kindle, the old original Kindle, or number 2, I guess. And here's some examples from our customers. Our customers freaking love our product. So, there aren't a ton of reviews, if you will, in the web on like all the different app stores of our product. There's maybe 100 or so on each of them, but they're all pretty much 5 stars. People love our product. Our users are so passionate about it. When Gmail changes something and we need to update our Chrome extension for it, immediately people just come screaming at us, no, I can't use a wayfind. We're changing, I believe that people shouldn't be spending half of their day in their email. I don't think that's how anybody in this room wants to spend their day. So to be the one product that can help with that by saying, you can close your inbox, we got you covered if something matters. That is my raison d'etre. That's why I can keep doing this every single day. And of course, we got coverage, lots of good things. See, you got a little bit of both of you, sharing it. But these are things that started to happen. We started to get some love. And fortunately, the activity started to go up. We actually released a few very specific things, some recommendations features in our product. So when you sign up, we recommend who are the people that you get back to most quickly. We also instituted a referral system. The product stuff isn't so important. What matters is that it's working. It took a long time to get there. Depending on how you want to call it, it could be 4 years, it could be 2 years or 5, whatever. It took a long time before we had success. And to Heather's point about axes, no, I don't have the dollar amount on that left axis. And I'm not going to put it up there because even though this is growth, it's not necessarily something that's going to make me even a 10 million plus exit tomorrow, per se, because this stuff still takes work. So I want to talk about some of the tactics that I've used that helped me to get through that time to eventually get to my success and how I sort of made it through that maze of startup land. So the rest of this talk is going to be helpful, not scary, hopefully. That's the goal here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that voyage. So let's start off with you, though. I do want you guys to answer this for me. Personally, you, think about this for a second. What is success for you? What does it look like? Is it a $10 million exit? Is it working with great people? Is it changing the world in some way? Anybody? What does success look like for you personally? Not for your business, but for you personally. Anybody? Not being forced to do what he doesn't want to do. So he doesn't want to work for the man, whether the man is a big tech company or the government. So you want that independence. Okay, that's a great reason to work for yourself, to be an entrepreneur. Other motivation? Anybody? I'm sorry?
Some inner fulfillment, like having the notion that I do what resonates with me, what matters in my life.
So his response was inner fulfillment, doing what matters to him in his life. So similar, it's not just the independent side of it, but the feeling like you're doing something meaningful as opposed to just grinding the crank. Other people? One more? Maybe a lady? We've got wonderful people here. Anybody, a personal motivation? How about you? Yes, Ursula.
The two things that doesn't work.
I'll repeat it as well.
Okay, it works. Okay. I guess that the two things the guys mentioned, the independence, being independent, doing what I really love doing, not being told to do. So I guess that.
So not being told what to do, and again that meaning, that being able to do what you believe in, and then similarly, there's success for your startup. It's what do you want to happen for your business, and that is pretty much a big part of the difference between being a freelancer and running a business. Is that those things may or may not be one and the same. When I had a team of 9 people, all of a sudden it meant that no matter what, they got paid. However, me, personally, I want at least a reasonable wage. But the reality is, as Don pointed out earlier, I've had more than a year at a time that I have not received a salary, and I was never rich. But I recognize that there are things that are more important to me. And yeah, someday I'd like a payday, but what matters to me is impact, is reaching those millions of people. Anybody want to share one of their versions of success for your business? Anybody? All right, I trust you guys all have good intentions. Hold on to that, though. So here are some tricks for the journey that I take advantage of that I think you all can. So the first part to happiness, to success for anything really is who you surround yourself with. It's the people you choose in your life. So I don't know if this expression, I assume it's the same in Polish, but we all say that people look like their pets. Or maybe we choose our pets based on what we look like. There's this woman who lives like right in the corner behind me, and she's just got like gray hair, and she's kind of nasty, and her dog always barks at my dog, like leans into the window of my house to like bark at my dog. It's like the only dog in the neighborhood that's bit anybody, and this woman is the exact same way. It's awful. We are like the things that we are surrounded by. Maybe not just our pets, but studies show that the 5 people that you are closest to are a very good indicator of how you dress, of how much money you make, of how much success you're going to have. They probably speak the same language, share similar anecdotes. They're maybe even a similar height to you. It's amazing how much we have in common with the people that we're close with. So, if you want to change what you're doing in your life and make a certain kind of impact, you can think about who are the people that are going to allow you to reach a little bit. So, this is a silly example here, but anybody ever read The 4-Hour Workweek? Okay. A few people have. It's one of these books that's kind of crazy. It's full of all these ridiculous ideas like working 4 hours a week and the whole, like only 4 hours a week. And of course, the author works a lot more than that. But the book has a lot of ideas in it that are just kind of like crazy and out there. And yet, they're trying to get you to go up to here. The reality is nobody's going to get that high. They're going to maybe end up somewhere over here. But I don't think you should surround yourself with people that if you're right here, they're right there. Because best case scenario, you move up a little bit. I think you should find some people who inspire you, who are a little bit crazy, who are going to make you go to those high links, because what they're going to do is they're going to pull you up. You might not get to the same place. If you hang out with Jeff Bezos, you might not become a billionaire tomorrow, but you will start getting insights, and you will start having successes. And there was a comment earlier about if your friends and family don't invest in your company, then who will? Well, the reality is not all of us have friends and family that have that kind of money, right? But you can find those people years before, hopefully. But think about who are the people in your life, not just the people that you've hired, but that you surround yourself with. I, for example, have this thing that I call a mastermind. It's a group of friends that run startups that every few weeks we get together for a few hours completely confidentially. It's like a board meeting, but like a board meeting where you can share all the bad news. And we help each other. And I've done this for years. I did it in DC, and every single person in that group during that time sold their business, myself included. And it helped so much to have that support group. And I didn't just choose people who are my best friends for that group. I chose people that I wanted to become closer to. And particularly in San Francisco, where I've only lived for 3 years now, when I started that group, I actually did not know those people very well, but they got behind that idea. And it's worked really well. So consider who you surround yourself with. And we're going to get a little bit more tactical. Some of this might seem a little bit too planned, and some of this might seem natural. But I do believe that you can be very, very explicit in how you choose the relationships you keep, who you surround yourself with, and how you ultimately, grow your network. So here are some ideas that I think are just really simple. In 2007 or 2008, I hosted a panel at South by Southwest. I'd never spoken at South by Southwest before. I think maybe I'd attended the year before. But I decided I would get 3 of the best speakers I knew in the world, and I would invite each of them to speak. So for my first session at South by Southwest, I had the biggest room with over 400 people, because I had people like Kathy Sierra and Craig Ball and some other folks that were just amazing. And all I had to do was moderate it. So what did that do? Sure, it achieved some credibility within that room, which was good. I got some business out of it. But what it also did, and more importantly, is I got to be really close with those speakers. I did the same thing the next year, where I invited out somebody from the Google Wave team, and I invited the guy who headed up Yahoo Pipes, and a guy who later is now an advisor for my business. And those other 2 people are now friends. And I didn't know any of those people before. Literally none of them. I just was like, Google Wave is going on. Is it a good collaboration tool or is it a bad one? Nobody else is hosting a panel on it. I want to do that. So get creative and don't, I run several events, and everybody that applies to speak at the event. They never submit panels. Think about how you can bring together great people, and don't worry so much about putting yourself in a position of leadership. By being the one who brings the people together, you will get to know those people really well, and then you'll build relationships with them. Because the most important people at most conferences, I'm sorry to say it, are not the people in the audience. It's the people you get to know and work with when you're a speaker or when you're an organizer. So I love you guys, but you haven't come up and talked to me, but I've spent a lot of time with these speakers. Why is that? You got to change that dynamic, partly by just being a little more assertive, but partly by being the one on the other side of that table and hosting and organizing. It does a lot. And very simple things you can do is dinner parties. When I do dinner parties, what I love about it is that I usually invite a few good friends, and then I invite someone that I just met and I don't really have a good reason to invite out, but I know that I want to get to know them better. So you sort of take advantage of sort of the crowd being really good, even if you don't think of yourself as being super strong, and that brings you up. So think about those ways you can bring other people together. Ultimately, you will become the leader if you do that. Another thing, and maybe this is so basic, but most of us don't do it, send links, send tips, reach out to people. There was the advice earlier from Ravi about about keeping in touch with investors. You just need to, anybody that you think you might someday want to hold on to, every 3 to 6 months, send them something, or every month send them something, and every 3 to 6 months, actually meet up with them. You just gotta let people stay front of mind. You can use any kind of CRM tool. Krakow has a great one called Base CRM. I don't know if you guys have seen them. They're going like crazy growth, and they're in your hometown, a great mobile CRM. I use Boomerang, which is a really simple tool that just returns to my inbox a message if they haven't responded, or every 3 months it just brings that message back. Really basic for CRM, not for like deals and things, but for keeping in touch, it works really well. And ask people for advice or offer them news, but just stay in people's life. I've always thought of, thought leadership is not being a leader, it's just being present more with those ideas. Like every single slide here could be from somebody else's presentation, but if you hadn't seen it and I'm on the stage talking about it, you think those ideas are mine. And that's not copying, that's just spreading the message and being the person who shared. So be that person. And of course, nothing beats real time. Now I know you guys are far away, but far away from Silicon Valley or some of the people that you want to know. But Skype is great. Use Skype, use Hangouts, use video if you can. I use video for every single call that I can. Every single one that I can, because it's so much better. So be the guy that when they suggest a phone call, you say, let's do video. Why not? It's a little bit more personal. And of course, coffee, lunch, beer. And if you have an event, even if it's not your event, just like invite them. Hey, I saw this good event about business-to-business marketplaces, and I know you run a marketplace. Do you want to check it out together? Or why don't you just go and maybe just show up? And now you're the guy who helped. You're the connector. There's nothing easier than inviting somebody to somebody else's event, but it shows that you care. It's a really easy thing to do. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the main reason why startups fail. You guys are smarter than most people probably in Silicon Valley, at least on the engineering side, And I hear people have been hiring people, and there's a group that sits right next to me at my office, another company, and they have a bunch of engineers, but they say their Polish engineers are by far their best, and they wish they could hire more there. You guys are amazing at that. Generally speaking, technology is not the reason why companies fail. We almost all get our product to the point where it works and functions. What fails is us getting distribution. So I have a question for you. What is distribution? What's an example of a distributor of some sort? Anybody? What's a distributor? Not marketing. What's distribution? Amazon what? Like Kindle? The Kindle store, you could put your book up there? Sure, that's a distributor. Who else? There's some easy ones. It's in your phone. You use it every time you install something. Don't all say it at once. App Store. Both, Google Play and of course the Apple App Store. Think about these marketplaces. What's another example of a distributor, though? YouTube, sure. That's a distribution mechanism. So there's marketing and there's distribution. We always think about marketing like, buy our product. We're on a billboard, right? There's display advertising. There's stuff that's a little bit more analytical, like cost per click, Google AdWords and so forth. But that stuff's expensive. Why? Because you always have to pay for something to happen. And has anybody ever run a marketing campaign that didn't get something to happen? Not what they wanted, maybe? Anybody? Marketing sucks, right? Like it almost never works. You're like, oh, let's put a sign up there. We're going to get 1 million people to come, right? And then 2 people show up, and you still paid the full amount. Marketing is tough. Distribution is usually where they have some stake in the outcome. So if you do well on the App Store, Apple does well on the App Store. But there's more things than just that, okay? So I want to talk about a few different types of distribution, because I said I wanted to make this tactical for you guys, and how they sort of work. So with marketing, if you're lucky, there's measurements involved, and they get paid up front, which is bad. You don't want them to get paid before you have any success. But it can work if you figure out all the metrics. And I'll put these slides up at slideshare.net/technotheory. I'll say that at the end again, but you'll have all these slides. They're not up yet. With marketing, you do all the customer support. You own the relationship. The good news is it's easy to get set up and you control it. You just don't control its success. You hope that it's going to work. Then there's other types of distribution mechanisms. So there's marketplaces. There aren't just the obvious ones, though. So in addition to Apple's and Google's regular ones for like Android and the iPhone, there's also things like the Google Apps Marketplace, which is a way to get distributed to businesses that use Google Apps. There are a ton of app stores that are focused on very specific things, like games or developers or so on. Look around for app stores. Just Google it and have your name of whatever you do in front of it, and you'll find that there are lots of people who are trying to sell stuff like yours, and they may not have heard of yours. And there's a particularly good chance they haven't because you're not based in San Francisco, which is where so many of these are. I hate to say that, but the best way to become aware of something is for you just to shoot them an email, and it works. And sometimes you're the best deal and the best opportunity there. And sometimes the money comes from an in-app purchase and things like that. You generally own the relationship with a marketplace, but sometimes, if they say the product sucked, then the App Store will give them their money back, and then unfortunately they just deduct it from your bank account, which kind of sucks. But it's sort of in the middle. It's kind of self-serve, so you're not going to necessarily get amazing results with a marketplace generally, but it is very easy and you do control it. What about affiliates? Has anybody ever used an affiliate program before? Okay. What do you use an affiliate program for? For flights. Okay, so what did you were selling flights? You run an airline or?
As a copywriter, so I
So you're a writer of sorts.
and I use it like to earn money.
Exactly. So there's a lot of people out there that are like him that are creating content for, say, travel or adventures or blog tools or whatever it happens to be. And these people are incentivized to write about your stuff. So it could be something like, you can sell a wayfinder on your website and you get 6 months. The 6-month plan is for half the price, and then you keep half of it. So instead of it being $90 for that time period, they're going to pay $45, and you're going to keep 22 of it. So now you think, well, that stinks for Jared because he only gets 22 bucks out of what would have been 90. But then I get the recurring revenue afterwards. And they're incentivized to draw as much traffic as possible. Some of our biggest successes at my company have been with people that have had mailing lists that relate to productivity. 200,000 people get our tool promoted to them, the writer gets a few $1,000s, and then we get a customer for life, which adds up. So affiliate is a very interesting model. The downside is that it sometimes takes setup to do it. You might have to have an affiliate tool of your own, or you might use something like Commission Junction, which is probably one of the ones you've used if you're sort of mainstream. The downside is you don't have a lot of control over it. They could do sketchy things with it if you're in like an affiliate like system where, in other words, if it's not a direct relationship you have with the affiliate marketer, they might not post it on sites that you think are appropriate. But it's good to have some kind of affiliate model, just something really simple where you could be on a daily deals site or something that relates to your industry. So like AppSumo is an example of one of those. There's several of those. I think there's like App du Jour is another one. And then there's traditional resellers, which startups never really seem to approach, but they can be great. So like Accenture is a big name reseller, but like in my space, Cloud Sherpas. Anybody have heard of Cloud Sherpas? Okay, Google has. Why have you heard of them? They are the #1 Google Apps reseller, right? I mean, that's important, When they need to close deals with big companies, believe it or not, Google doesn't do that themselves. They have resellers. As a matter of fact, if you want to buy Google Apps for your company and you have more than 50 seats, you can't just do it online. And if you have more than 250 seats, I mean, the numbers are a little bit hazy in terms of where the exact line is, but they have to go through a reseller. So those resellers get leads from Google, but similarly, those resellers are out there looking for business. And then they get a small cut out of that recurring revenue. Now, why is Cloud Sherpas interesting to us? Well, we're an email product, and we integrate with Gmail. So we want them to sell our product on top of it and get a cut out of it. There's probably something similar in your business where somebody is already selling CRM, and thus they need some time tracking tool that you built. So think about who is already selling into your audience and if they can make money by signing deals with them. One of the differences you should be aware of with resellers is they generally own the relationship. They often will do the tier 1 support, like the basic questions and things like that, which is a good thing for you. It takes a lot of work to get it set up. There's oftentimes legal things involved. And you do get a little bit of control because you're working with them. It's an actual personal relationship, generally. But think about resellers. Anything you can do that other people make money by selling your stuff, that means you can get back to building your product and you don't have to spend all this money on marketing that doesn't deliver. It's great if you can get AdWords to build a perfect funnel, but I mean, has anybody heard the expression? If you know that you make $2 for every $1 on advertising, how much should you spend? Anybody? What's the quote around that? If you make $2 for every $1 you spend, how much money should you put into your marketing? What's that? Infinite. But it doesn't work that way, because everybody in this room would be rich if it worked that way. Even if you figure out a great campaign, there are going to be limits, and you will need these other vehicles in your arsenal. So even in the best case scenario where you get your funnel right, you're not going to be a billion-dollar business just by doing AdWords, unfortunately. Otherwise, Google would, well, that keeps them busy. But if you are going to do marketing, though, I want you to look at terrible slides like this. Has everybody seen this terrible slide? Raise your hand if you have. You all should raise your hand. This is startup metrics for pirates. Don't hurt your eyes on it right now. I want you to hurt your eyes on it later. If you are going to do marketing, I want you to pay attention to the numbers and the metrics. Dave McClure, whose name you've probably heard by now, he's somewhat infamous. He's the initial person behind 500 Startups, one of my investors and a great person. And on his site, he has this slideshow and a video that's called Startup Metrics for Pirates. And the reason why it's called that is because it's acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue. That's the funnel, or R, hence Startup Metrics for Pirates. I don't know, maybe they make a different sound in Polish from pirates. Like, I always find it amusing how like dogs have different sounds in other languages. But anyway, we say R. And anyway, this is a phenomenal, phenomenal presentation that I hope you will watch on your own. I make every single person of my team watch this, because when we're working on our product, we're always trying to figure out, where in the funnel are we improving our product? Is this in the activation of the customer? Is this in acquiring them before that? Is it by referring more users back into the funnel? And you find holes in your funnel in that whole loop of how you make money, and all of a sudden, you can make a big difference. When you start thinking this way, and something comes up that's going to take 20 hours of work but affects 2% of your users, you just say, screw that. I'd rather improve something that's going to improve 5% on the first step of the funnel, and it's going to bring me thousands more users. So it's really, really good to think about funnels, and this is the best way to do it, is to watch this talk and something with it. If you are going to do distribution, which is my recommendation, I want to reveal a little bit of a secret. Even though there are marketplaces, and even though there are resellers and all these things, with the exception of AdWords, and probably not even really true with AdWords, that stuff is actually a lot more relationships than you think. So even though Don made a nice comment about how, Microsoft pays developers, the reality is on the Android marketplace, they're looking to the best apps on iOS and saying, come to us. They may not give them money, they may, but what they will do is they'll say, we'll guarantee this many users in this amount of time. Or at least they will say, we'll do everything in our power to do it. They make deals like that. So I'm saying this for two reasons. One, because there are opportunities that can actually be more than just jumping into these app stores and hoping for the best. And two, build relationships with the developer evangelists for all of these companies. So for example, well, I won't use a personal example of what we're about to do because it's under wraps, but if there's a feature that's going to launch on Chrome or on Android or on Windows 8, whatever it happens to be, and you are going to put that feature into your product, hopefully because you literally want to have that feature in your product, they want to bring attention to it when it launches. So reach out to a developer evangelist and say, we're going to have that in our product. Is there something we can do together? Maybe we'll sprint to get, because the truth is you don't want to work with these early features while it's still buggy and while there's no good documentation for it. But you're going to be willing to do that if you're going to be on the homepage of an app store, right? So even though all these systems seem egalitarian and equal and whatever, the reality is there's a lot of relationships here. I sit down with the developer evangelists from all of these companies and work out some of my goals and some of their goals, and if there's ways, things can be worked out. So reach out to those people. There is a representative in Poland. I think it's in Krakow, right? You have developer evangelists? Talk to Don. Maybe he'll sign you a check or something. Who knows? But the point is this stuff happens by relationships. So use those same tips and tactics I mentioned and bring out a friendly developer evangelist to beers. They'll probably pay for it. It's probably their job to pay for you. It's like the best of everything, right? That's what's good about hanging out with investors, too. You'll get the best food ever. Trust me. So I want you to use all of those tips to get your company to the best possible place. But I hope you realize it's still going to take a really long time, and that there are some motivations behind building your business that you're going to need to stick through for the long haul. Email productivity is my identity. You know, I want, if you guys have an event and it relates to email productivity, I want to be the first person to come to mind. I know I didn't talk about that with you. That's because I'm only here to help you today. I'm not here to sell you anything. But generally speaking, I want to be known for email and productivity. And I'm fine with making that my identity for like frickin' 10 plus years. Are you fine with whatever the new hot thing is that you want to build a product for, making that your identity for a really long time? Because if you are, then that's great. And you're going to get a chance to slog through it and hopefully make it to the other side of that payment curve and get those great reviews and get lots of happy users. So, thank you, and now I have time for questions. Anybody?
Hi. Actually, it's not a question, but it's one-time opportunity for me to tell these people that I work for Google in developer relations here in Krakow, so I'm your contact.
Yeah. So like if you're doing something with a Chrome Identity API, for example, tell this guy,
exactly.
he'll get you some attention.
Exactly.
Lots of opportunities. And Chrome is a great distribution store if you haven't thought of it. Even if you just have a link to your app, what the heck, people search for it. They're a little more permissive than Apple.
So any more question?
Please. We can talk about accelerators, distribution, productivity.
And when something happened to this this chart you showed, that it grew, started to grow.
Yep.
Was it something special that happened,
Yes.
or it was just?
Sometimes you will have magic, and I've had the magic of being on the front page of LinkedIn for a week straight, which was really cool, but that wasn't that magic. The magic that happened with us was we worked for a really long time on an algorithm that would analyze your email history and tell you how quickly you get back to certain people, and thus you should add them to your Wayfind list. So before, people had to think, who matters to me? Oh, it's my spouse. Oh, it's my boss. Now we could say, oh, well, yeah, I see this list. I should check all these things off. That drove our engagement through the roof. We also released a referral system at the same time so that when they invited their boss, they also, or excuse me, when they got alerts from their boss, they also invited them. So it was two very specific features that we worked on for a long time.